The Minister of Finance has taken another World Bank loan. Another one. The ANC has historically been unwilling to take loans from the IMF and the World Bank because those loans have actually caused major economic crisis in countries like Zambia and Zimbabwe. And therefore, the ANC, trying to protect South African sovereignty and fiscal strategy and fiscal policy, was reluctant under Mandela, under Mbeki, under Zuma. That's only changed under Ramaphosa. In the last 5 years, the Ramaphosa administration has been willing to move like DJ Khaled when it comes to loans from the IMF, from the World Bank. Another one, another one, another one. And before you blink, another one. What's going on? Let's talk about it. Yesterday, there was a flurry of reports that in June of 2025, the World Bank Board of Executive Directors approved a $1.5 billion loan, $1.5 billion loan for South Africa. This translates to 26.5 billion rands. The media is reporting on it positively, like it's grounds for celebration. But I don't think that they're coming clean with South Africans. I think that they're actually manufacturing consent to get people to like this or ignore this or to think it's a good thing when actually it's a cause for alarm. It's a red flag that needs to be considered by the public. The World Bank itself said this loan will address South Africa's challenges of low growth and high unemployment by easing constraints in the energy and freight transport sectors. The bank said its program will enhance energy security, increase port and rail volumes, and support the shift to a low-carbon economy. They said that the loan will make available funds for state-owned Eskom holdings to bolster the grid for renewable generation and for Transnet. They said South Africa's port and rail company will be able to increase its freight transport capacity as a result of this loan. They said the financing will support government's plans to add 3,500 megawatts renewable energy capacity by March 2027. And this will go along with private investment potential to add 200 kilometers, which is 124 miles, of new transmission lines. And this is according to a fact sheet on the development policy loan. And this fact sheet is provided by the World Bank itself. Then they say that Transnet reforms are expected to increase rail network capacity and enable the entry of private operators. This is basically privatization. So this is part of development policy financing from the World Bank, which provides non-earmarked funds for development policy operations, which are known as DPOs. So this is the third World Bank loan. In September of 2023, the World Bank Board of Executive Directors approved a $1 billion development policy loan for South Africa's long-term energy security and low-carbon transition. In January of 2022, the World Bank Group Board of Executive Directors approved South Africa's request for $750 million development policy loan. The development policy loan supports the implementation of South Africa's economic reconstruction and recovery plan, which was the plan that was being pushed at the time. So a loan in 2022, a loan in 2023, and now another loan in 2025. In total, the loans from the World Bank in the last 4 years accumulate to $3.25 billion US, or in rands, 57.7 billion rands. South Africa has taken other loans for similar purposes, just to go over them. In July of 2020, the IMF loaned South Africa 4.3 billion, which is about 82 billion rands, emergency support to address the COVID-19 pandemic. In November of 2023, a loan deal was signed for 0.5 billion euros from the government of Germany for concessional financing to support the country's just energy transition, in line with the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan. This was a 12-year loan. In March of 2025, a loan deal earlier this year, you saw Ursula von der Leyen coming through. A loan deal of 4.7 billion euros was signed, which is over 95 billion rands for the just energy transition. The interesting thing about that loan, the European one that came with Ursula von der Leyen, is that they didn't actually call it a loan in public. They called it an investment package. It's not, it was just sounding very investory, very investment packagey. But if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know that this is a loan. You would think that these are investors coming in to spend their own money, to take their own risks, what you would typically expect from investors, because investment is supposed to be risky. Not these investors, boy, not these investors. These investments, and this investment is the kind of investment where you take the loan, you pay loan insurance, you take the risk, then you have to go and build independent power stations and give them access, give IPP producers access to the grid. You take all the risk, all the obligation. They give you the money, they take all the interest and the profit. Funny investors, right? Funny investors. They're lenders is what they are, right? So here's what was said at the time.
South Africa and Europe are united by common passions, by our great literature, by our love to sport, by our beautiful nature, our excellent wines, but most importantly, we are united by shared values and common interests. Today, we are together announcing an investment package to mobilize 4.7 billion euro in South Africa, and this is in both our interest. It includes funding for the clean energy transition, but also funding to boost vaccine manufacturing. South Africa wants to protect the health of its people as well as your autonomy and your local industries. We Europeans want to diversify some of our most critical supply chains, and we know that viruses know no borders. So that is what I call a true mutual interest.
I don't know who told these people that Africa loves IPPs and vaccines, man. It seems like there's some talking point, there's some spreadsheet somewhere with information that we don't know. What did you make of her comments? Do you see what I was talking about? So here's what's confusing, or rather what's worrying about these loans. 3 things I want to point out. Number 1, the Minister of Finance has consistently pointed out that one of his biggest worries is the size of the debt. Yet under his time in office, he has consistently signed multiple long-term and expensive loans. That seems to be a contradiction. Evidence to support my statement that the minister has been concerned. From his first speech in the 2021 medium-term budget policy statement, the minister spoke about the cost of debt and how debt is preventing South Africa's path to economic and social recovery. He committed to enabling long-term growth by narrowing the budget deficit and stabilizing debt. In 2021, he said the 4 trillion in debt that we now owe is incurring debt service costs that will become the largest portion of spending compared to individual functions. These debt service costs are non-discretionary. In other words, we cannot avoid paying them. Their effect, therefore, is to crowd out other spending priorities. Debt service costs in 2021 were expected to rise from 269 billion to 365 billion in 2024, and that was higher than the health and the police service budgets. He raised that as a concern in 2021. Then in 2025, the budget 3.0, the third version, third attempt, says South Africa's debt and debt service costs continue to rise, and debt service costs are projected to grow faster than economic growth, implying that the economy cannot sustain the level of debt. Then they say government debt levels rose from 627 billion in 2008 to 5.3 trillion in 2023-2024 and are projected to reach 6.8 trillion in 2027-2028. Yes, you are correct. So why, if that's your concern, are you going to become a debt collector? Why more borrowing? He said, in this regard, South Africa's debt trajectory remains unsustainable until government achieves and maintains a debt-stabilizing primary fiscal surplus. So, if you care about debt levels, why are you getting more debt for something that is not necessarily going to grow the economy in the short to medium term? It's not. The growth challenges are coming from the fact that the workforce has skills shortages. coming from the fact that the education system is not working. That's what's causing a lot of these problems here. The deindustrialization is not because only of electricity generation. It's actually because companies don't have an appetite to manufacture in South Africa, in part because the workforce doesn't have the skills. That suggests that where you need to be spending your money, and if you're borrowing at all, needs to be on fixing the schools, fixing the universities, fixing the TVETs, fixing the CETAs. However, this money that you're borrowing for Eskom, and particularly for it to be able to pay IPPs and to connect IPPs to the grid, does not seem to be the energy solution that you are portraying it to be. It doesn't seem to be fiscally prudent debt to acquire. It's not growth establishing debt. It's something that's going to help other people. The obvious question is, if the debt levels are unsustainable, why take on more debt? Why? That's like saying we're speeding too fast on the highway and driving at 220 is not safe. So therefore, to solve the problem, why don't you press that accelerator? Let's go 300 kilometers per hour. If it's dangerous and risky to go 220, why are we going 300 kilometers per hour? How can that be logically sound? I don't think it is. So this leads me to my second point. The IMF and the World Bank have a history of using the fact that you've taken their money to dictate policy. And they usually advocate for austerity programs, raising of taxes, privatization of state-owned enterprises, and a reduction of the civil service. I think this is actually what's been driving or drove that VAT increase idea to begin with. And, this is what Johan Rupert said about them in his interview with Peter du Toit in the book Stellenbosch Mafia, chapter 3, page 51. This is what he said about the IMF. Let me read it for you. I think we'll be at the IMF in a year's time. The governing party don't know what's waiting. We'll either have an Arab Spring type event or Ramaphosa must restructure everything, and he cannot do it. The IMF, however, will force you to restructure. And if you think about it, isn't that the best thing that could happen to the country? Halve the public service. That's what I was talking about. Clean up state-owned enterprises. That's privatization. Look, the nationalists were rotten, but they didn't steal everything. These people, whenever someone says these people are incompetent and they steal. You people, these people. You're saying it right here. Page 52 now that I'm on. The IMF will be a bloody fiasco. Ooh, fiasco. Left, right, and center. And that's what he's saying right here. The IMF will be a bloody fiasco. I don't know how many companies will be able to manage interest rates of 25%, 30%. But what's the alternative? I've asked Remgro and Rand Merchant Bank to come up with disaster scenarios. Every company should do it. Paul Harris says the IMF is a black swan. I told him, no, it's not. It's a serious possibility. This book was published in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. Yeah, originally published in 2019. It's right here. Get this book. By the way, we talk about lots of interesting books in the book club. You should join. It's called the Book Lab. It's the members only section of this channel. So the ANC knew back in the days that IMF money, World Bank money, don't touch the money. Now they're touching that money. Johan Rupert, somebody who's worked in the banking sector in America, somebody who's worked and owned large parts of banks in South Africa, has given his view. He's telling it like it is. He didn't know that I'm going to make this video in 2025 using his words, right? So this also begs the question, why get loans from entities that will try to control your fiscal strategy and your fiscal policy unless you agree and you want them to? Isn't that what's happening here? Because it's known. Rupert knows it. I'm sure Beggy knew it. I'm sure it's the reason why in the ANC they took a strong position, say we're not going to take any money from these guys. We're not going to do it. So remember earlier I was saying this money doesn't make sense. I'm going to my third point now, to take this money and then say it's going to grow the economy, etc., etc. Look at this data. The spending on IPPs does not seem to be the best bang for buck when it comes to the energy mix. This data that I'm showing you here is from the ESCOM 2024 annual report, and it says that IPPs are providing 9% of the energy. 9%, but costing ESCOM 27% of its energy expenditure. 27%, 148 billion rands a year on IPPs. It seems evident that you cannot meet South African energy needs looking at this data, ESCOM's data, using IPP generated power. And if that you were to do and go full IPP, the cost of energy for South African households and businesses would be exorbitant. Look at it. If ESCOM is paying 148 billion for 10%, close to 10% of the energy generation per year, to get 100%, you will have to pay 1.48 trillion a year. 1.48 trillion rands a year for energy generation to meet South Africa's current needs. Then if you're saying you want to get more manufacturing, to industrialize, to increase the energy demand on the South African grid, how much more does that cost go up? So I don't think it's genuine, logical, or financially proven that this direction of funding towards these IPPs is for the purposes of growing ESCOM, of providing energy security. I don't think it is. I think also it's illogical that they are putting a lot of this pressure on South Africa, which is not in the top 10 of carbon emitters. All of the carbon emitters are in Europe, they're in China, it's America. Africa is negligible in carbon emissions, but they're coming through saying, you guys, take this IPP, you go green, you go carbon neutral, you do all of these things. You're the guys who've been polluting for the last 50 to 100 years. First industrial revolution, second industrial revolution. We haven't even caught up as Africans. We're behind. But then you're coming around here to enforce taking of loans so that we can go green while you guys are still using coal from the same South Africa. So, something is funny money with all of that. I don't want to lie to you guys. Something is, you have to be aware of the illogical nature of what is being advocated for here. And then you have to ask yourself, who stands to benefit from all of these loans taken from the World Bank, the IMF, EU, Germany? Who stands to benefit? The loans are specifically for IPPs and connecting IPPs to the grid. Well, then some of the biggest players that you need to be aware of in the IPP space, African Rainbow Energy and Power. It's owned by Patrice Motsepe. You need to know that. The other big player who's going to benefit from the selling of energy, same model that he's using for Vumatel, because as you know, Rupert owns Vumatel, Dark Fiber Africa, then other companies then sell households the internet as competitors to Vumatel, which also still provides. Anyway, model that I'm trying to point out to you is that Rupert has something which is known as the Energy Exchange of Southern Africa. It's owned by Remgro, his company. It's going to be selling energy that they get. So all the IPPs connect to the grid, then they have to sell to the Energy Exchange of Southern Africa. Then the Energy Exchange then sells to households. Bulla play. You people don't see what's going on here. Do you not? This is not Hosh Karimaima capture. This is another level. This is another level. Do you see what's going on here? This ain't for the Hosh. The Edwins, that's small stuff. That's small stuff. Do you see how government is taking loans to help IPPs owned by billionaires to make profits from ESCOM, generational profits, because purchase power agreements have been signed. I think they're 25 years. These purchase power agreements, ESCOM has to sign deals with these people. So taxpayers are going to be paying for these IPPs for long. Oh boy. Oh boy. You know who else is another interesting player? Interesting new player in the IPP world is the former COO of ESCOM. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. He's also apparently now a owner of an IPP and won a bid in the last IPP window. Do you not see what's going on here? Another loan. Another loan. What do you think? I'm going to end the episode here. I just wanted to give you an update on everything that's happening. Let's talk in the comments. Yeah, it's IPPs. You down with IPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with IPP? Yeah, you know me. You down with IPP?